We're now live. Here we go. Hello, people joining us. Welcome. It's great to see lots of folks coming in. And with Mr. Walter Borden joining us today. Press this. Hi, Suzanne. So, there we go. We're starting up just very shortly. Ensuring our guest of honor is with us too. There we go. Okay. Oh. There we go. I think we're all almost there. Oh gosh. I think that's happening. Almost there, everybody. Just where we go. Hi, Walter.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for enduring my Instagram remedial life here as I figure out how to work it all. But welcome, everybody, to the Revolving Door, number 3 today. And today's a series of conversations around Pride Month to talk about coming out and being queer in the theater, in our lives, in our world. And each conversation is with colleagues who I've had the great honor of working with over the years and who've taught me so much about the world, and about myself, and about others in it. And Walter Borden is no exception. So I wanted to welcome you, Walter, and let our folks out in the Instagram universe know a little bit about you. And Walter is an actor and a poet and a playwright and an activist and a teacher. And one of 18 siblings, which always knocks me down. He was born and educated in Nova Scotia. And I always forget this too, and trained at the Circle in the Square Theater School in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He has performed in Europe and the United States, across Canada, and in all kinds of repertoire, from the traditional to the brand new to the queer to the you name it. Walter's done a lot of work, and I would say like one of the great highlights of Walter's career have been his collaborations with Janet Sears. I think you've been in every iteration of Harlem Duet. Is that correct?
What's that, Peter?
You've been in all the versions of Harlem Duet.
No, not all of them. Not in the first one, but
Not in the first one,
in all the rest.
but in all the rest.
Yes.
And Walter was instrumental in the programming of the first Black playwright at the Stratford Festival in its then 50 years with Harlem Duet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the same year with The Odyssey by Derek Walcott.
Hey, yes.
Yeah.
No, the next year.
the next year.
The next.
So
Mhm.
the first was followed by a second, which is always important. Um, Walter's a recipient of the Order of Canada, the Order of Nova Scotia, the Queen Elizabeth II Golden and Diamond Jubilee, the Portia White Prize, numerous Merit and Dora Mavor awards, and is the writer of a play called Tightrope Time, which is, to put it simply, mildly, is a play about being black and queer in the world, and is a sort of a life's work in some way, Walter,
Totally. It's
of
totally.
your
Yes.
experience.
47 years.
47 years you've been living that play,
Yes.
and Tightrope Time is going to have a premiere upcoming, and I don't know how much we're allowed to say about it, but it will look for it. Tightrope Time by Walter Borden. It will be in a theater near you upcoming. Talk to me about Tightrope Time, Walter. What's it about? What's its inspiration? What's its heart?
Yeah, I thought about that for a long time, Peter. I've been asked that many times, and over the years, I've tried to answer that question in various ways, and then eventually it came back to something that I had read
Hmm.
during my readings of Lorraine Hensbury. She's a
Oh, yeah.
great muse for me. And one of the things Lorraine had written, it was this phrase, the illumination of the resiliency of the human spirit. And
Wow.
that is precisely what this work was about.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, it can be approached from many angles, and it is, many.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the voices that were speaking were all talking about the illumination of the resiliency of the human spirit. And
Oh.
that's it. Yeah.
Now you say you've been working on this play for a really long time, and you've performed it before.
Oh, yes, I performed it. Yes, from Amsterdam to Vancouver.
Wow, wow. And then you took a step away from it for a while, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Or it took a step away from me. Because that's the one thing that I could say about this piece, that after all this time, I knew who was in control.
Yeah,
But when I did it in Vancouver in 1990,
yeah.
and I've done, so many productions of it coming at from different angles, depending on the director. And in this particular instance, the director had chosen to present the work through the eyes of a character called Chuck, the hustler.
Hmm.
And for me, that was a very interesting thing to observe. But within me, and this would be the work itself speaking, it was totally, uh, uh, what's the word? Well, I can say about it, because I talk about it like another person. It was not pleased.
Right,
And
right.
so it went away for 20
Hmm.
years.
Wow.
But during that 20 years, at various times, there would be a little like knock on the door in there, and then it would go. When it returned
Yeah,
after 20 years, and it returned with a force,
yeah.
which shocked me.
Hmm.
Um, I was sitting in Norman Jewison Parquet up on Isabella,
Yes.
and out of the blue, one of the voices started speaking.
Wow.
And it took me so by surprise
Wow.
because the words were instantly there and all that. And I went through one speech just sitting there on a bench.
Yeah.
And then after I got over the initial shock that it was back, then came the second shock. I had said that same speech so many times.
Yeah.
And when I said it this time, I suddenly knew what I was saying. I knew what I was saying because I was automatically accentuating different words, different things, even though I was just feeling it off. And I'd stop and say, yeah, that's what it was, or that's what it is, like
Right.
that. But the other major thing was that when it came back shape shifted so that characters were gone, had morphed. And one of the main characters that had gone was Chuck.
Wow.
Jump forward until right now.
Yeah.
The one character that came roaring back after over 20 years is Chuck.
Wow.
And other characters have gone.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the most fascinating thing. But when I look at it, and as we're looking at it, I'm seeing this is it. This is the message. It's quite amazing, but it could not have been done any faster.
Yeah, it's so unique to have a piece that you live with over a very long period of time. Like we so associate often pieces we write with a specific time in our life. And
Yes.
this is one that in the play, we should let folks know. In the play, you play characters from like a 5-year-old boy to a 80-year-old woman. Like you play the range of people in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's autobiographical and but it's more than just a confessional biography play.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was the whole, that's what I had to figure out, or that's what it allowed me to figure out over a vast range of time. That
Yeah,
it was not about the autobiography aspect of it was something that was the palette against which the painting had to be done,
yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed to the other way around.
yeah,
Because as is said in the piece itself, and this always, it makes me smile now as opposed to scratch my head, but like from the very beginning, where the autobiographical aspect comes into it, the words were telling me things that I didn't recognize until later and later and later.
wow,
Well, from the very beginning, one of the characters states, I am nature's love child, a witness and a messenger, and freedom is my father. I've been called by many other names. I am called by many still, but restless is the name they gave me, and I am fashioned from the wind. So later on, when I started trying to figure out what was going down in this work, it was already there. Listen, I'm just a witness and a messenger. When I say I've been called by many other names, the names have been teacher. They have been, mentor. They have been philosopher. They have been many things. And some
activists.
of them I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
even mention.
right.
Because and
Yeah,
I say, like the old say, child, I've been called everything but a child of God at certain times. But that was all there in the you will be called by many other names.
yeah,
But you're a witness and a messenger. You are a griot. But you're also a spirit.
yeah,
And that's why you're fashioned from the wind. Now that might sound kind of heavy or whatever, but the fact is that that is precisely what it is all about.
Yeah.
And that is what the eyes watching will get. So it's not here, it's about the illumination of the resiliency of the
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
spirit.
Like there's a sort of central character in the play whose name is Black Man Talking.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Man Talking is exactly that. He's a black man talking who sometimes is you, sometimes other people, and talks right to the audience about this witnessing, this messengering of the play. Um, when did that come to you? When did that idea that because you act all the time, you are performing in other people's words. Where did you have the instinct to go, no, this has to be a play that I write as well?
That was in 1974, August the 4th.
August 4th, 1974.
Yeah. And I sat down to start to write a book.
Wow.
I was going to write this book about things that had gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So I very quickly wrote this first piece.
Hmm.
It was a piece, Aquarius came dawning as the mistress of illusion. That. And when I finished it, which was certainly not the length that it is now, but when I had finished it, I thought, oh my God, that's all I have to say.
No.
There goes my book.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I decided then was just to write things as they would come to me.
I see.
And from 1974 until 1983, I wrote. And then I looked at the work and I said, oh, I hear 6 voices there.
Okay. Wow.
And I showed it to a friend of mine who had started a theater company. And he said, yeah, let's put that together in a play. So the first go was 6 characters. And it was called Can't Stop Now, Saints Have Trod.
Huh.
And that was in 83. In 84, there were 3 more characters. And in 85, there were 12. And it stayed more or less that way for all those years. Sometimes, as I say, characters morphing into each other, other times disappearing altogether. And it wasn't until 2012 that Black Man Talking just suddenly appeared. Bam! And it was quite a thing to write him. It was one of those sessions where, I'd be lying in bed. Always, when I would try to drift off to sleep, I would leave a pad beside me and a pen because he would wake me up and I would write certain things and I'd go back to sleep and write. It was quite frantic for a week. Yeah. Anyway, out he came. Yeah. But to me, he was just another character. So since he was the last one there, he ended the play.
Right.
Well, in 2016, I was doing a production of it and having a great deal of problem with it. And I was telling the director at the time, Juanita Peters, I said, Juanita, I don't think I can do this play anymore because I can't connect with it. I can't. And so she said, okay, well, we'll just work with what we have. Well, during the rehearsals, one day, I'm standing outside there on Garlic Street, outside the bus stop theater. I'm having a cigarette. And it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Wow.
The character who was the central character in the work was always the young man. Telling. And it suddenly hit me. That was from 1974 to 2016. Wow. Well, the young man had become Black Man Talking. It was his not the young man's work. He had morphed into. And the moment that I had that in my head, I could tell the whole story. I could tell it so easily from Black
Right.
Man Talking. He
Yeah.
was the griot. You're not
Right.
a griot at 20, but you are a griot at that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
the
How
moment
interesting.
you see, it's always
Yeah.
been like that. And so, um, because I could release him that way and let him take his spot, then all of a sudden other things started happening. Suddenly, a character like, uh, and such an instrumental one, the Minister of the Interior,
Mm.
who was there to decorate the interior of your minds. Well, all of a sudden, hey, it was, hey, you know what? That's exactly what Black Man Talking has been doing from the moment he opened his mouth, decorating the interior of your minds. Gone was the Minister of the Interior
Wow.
because he had been, absorbed into a greater wisdom.
And characters evolved and morphed into others
Oh, yeah,
as you aged and as you're witnessing,
right. And
evolved and
yes. And
the
so the
message.
most important thing that evolved over the whole thing was how to let the masculine and feminine voice speak.
Uh-huh.
How to do that? What was the balance? Who had the say? And
Yeah.
and it just again morphed into where the ultimate say is it's like the dominant characters are the griot, Black Man Talking, the Estelusti spirit, the other side of him. And they acquiesce to who? The Sphinx.
Our listeners should know that Sphinx is a character in Walter's play. And you're constantly inviting us to think of real lived experience and mythological experience, historical experience. Uh,
Exactly. And
of,
because of, my own personal
yeah,
belief system, the
yeah,
Sphinx stands huge.
yeah,
And so it was also natural for me to be able to deliver in that way. When everybody acquiesced to the the Sphinx, the epitome of the masculine feminine.
yeah,
It was all that. And the lead up to it was going from his mother
yeah,
in the kitchen to the old woman in the woods to
yeah,
the Sphinx. There are the feminine voices. They're
yeah,
just there.
yeah,
And with the last, a real blending of the feminine and the masculine in the form of the Sphinx.
wow.
So that's tightrope time.
A simple little tiny play. That's what I love about it. It's so large, its story. And yet it is very simple. It's very direct too. It's not like an overly intellectual kind of thing. It's
Not at all. Not at all.
yeah, yeah,
Because the wisdom that comes out of the Sphinx has already been set up in the wisdom that comes out of his mother's mouth, the wisdom that comes out
yeah,
of the old woman's mouth, the wisdom that comes out of some of the characters that people would ordinarily just toss off. Adie, the over the hill hooker. Her whole thing is loaded with
yeah,
uh, philosophy and
yeah,
all that. Ethiopia, the drag queen, her
yeah,
own way of it. Chuck the hustler, very much so. Uh, and and all these voices come out of the Sphinx.
It's amazing. It's amazing, amazing accomplishment in life work because it's like, you know, a memoir of sorts, but a theatrical one.
Yeah,
Uh, Invites everything that the theater has. It's not just on this date I did this, but is that witnessing, that messenger all the time.
And I had to make sure, and this has really been front and center in my mind while wrestling with Chuck, as you know I am, that when someone looks at the work and they refer to, you know, the gay aspect, what I wanted to make absolutely clear in the characters of the speaking, just as my blackness
Yeah.
is not about a color, it is about a psychology.
Mm.
Like so, the whole gay aspect. Listen, I have to take you out of just an indulgent in sexuality, in physicality,
Yeah.
and take you into the world of the psychology. It is a psychology.
Mm. Mm.
And once that happens, then for me, it is so easy, so much more easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the way things are, our attention and our focus is geared to certain things for specific reasons. But from the various earliest times in my development, as I look back over it, without even knowing the words to attribute to it, to the thinking,
Right.
it was always about the psychology behind it,
Mm.
and
Mm.
not the immediate aspect of something.
Wow.
You see what I mean?
I do. I
And
do.
and because therefore my whole growing up was predicated upon that. I could deal with, and often and certainly had to deal with the aspects. It was in with regard to being gay or in the gay world. What aspects of this are gay, are being given the most focus? And I would figure those out, yeah. But I say, but behind it, I am operating from a point of a psychology. And once
Right.
I have that down, in other words, if someone comes to me and they're going to be either challenging or, taking their stand with respect to gay or not gay, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, what am I dealing with here? They are bombarding me with certain aspects of an issue. And
Right.
I am going to come at you from a psychological focus. And I
Mm.
already got your ass. The moment you start that, I got you. Because I am figuring out your psychology
Right.
that is predicated upon these few aspects that you're talking about. And I
Yeah.
have this universe of psychology in front of me, and I will get you.
And how was that when you were younger? Like how I asked you in a conversation the other day we were having for this about like when did you come out? And you had like an interesting answer to that. So what was it like being you in rural Nova Scotia in a long time ago, right?
Okay. Well, it was like this. As I said to you, I never came out because I was never in.
I love
And
you.
it was as simple as this. First of all, I knew at 9 years of age. I knew at
Yeah.
grade 4. I knew. It was just crystal clear. Now, because my whole development up to that time had been one in a community, in a family in which I was already recognized as, not to use this overuse saying different. No, this child was different, but he didn't present it in some kind of a in your face kind of a way, whether intentionally or unintentionally. He was just him. And I had always been given space,
Wow.
which is difficult to think about coming from a family of 18 people. But I was given space by
Wow.
everybody. So when it came to, now, I knew this feeling, these feelings that I had. But at that stage, what could I use to think about it, balance it out? Well, I observed what had happened, what was happening in my community. Okay, now, there was one person who, in terms of everyday talk right now, you would know instantly. Okay, but this person was totally protected within the community.
Wow.
And definitely in the church, interestingly enough. In this way, if you heard the women of the church talk about, and indeed my mother would say it also, they say, "Oh, blank, he's, he's very gentle, very quiet, so mannerly, just very quiet, and he plays his piano so well." Okay. The men would say, "Oh, quiet, he keeps to himself, but he can play that piano." So my mind is saying, okay, I know what these other phrases are referring to. What is the common phrase, though? Boy, he can play that piano.
Wow.
So I'm saying, therefore, whatever this other is, it is overridden by he can play that piano.
Wow.
Okay.
His gift, they could see his gifts.
Exactly.
Right.
And so with my little mind, walking along saying, okay, so regardless of what the issue might be, even here, you know who you like, da-da-da-da-da-da, they're concentrating on what your gifts are. That is what, so I grew up with that sense in my head. Like, and it wasn't difficult for me it wasn't a matter of, just using my gifts to get around something. No, it was the opposite. It was using my gifts to lay out something in front of you, and you eventually see that the number of gifts far outnumbered this one issue that you wanted to talk about.
Mm. Mm.
That was, so I was trained in that.
And so you were always out. You always felt received and loved in your outness as
Oh,
a
yeah. And
boy. Yeah.
as far as in the community, well, of course, the young folks didn't take long to know who was who and what was what. We all chummed around together. We all played together, but the little signals were sent here and there, various ways, until there was a group within a group, and that group within the group, the gay group, they trusted each other. Even if they weren't gay, where everybody was experimenting anyway, and so. In the larger community, even some of those ones there who might, say a little bit, a little something about this piano player, that was just to handle insecure moments within themselves, because it played no big role in the larger community. And indeed, when that person might run into this person, it was all, hey, great, that, you see. But this psychology from the community was not something that was just isolated and alone, because with other issues that society deals with, okay, another side of the gay side, there were elderly people in the community, men particularly. Well, what did you always hear growing up? Oh, well, dear, he's a bachelor. He's a bachelor, dear. No, he never married, never had a wife, but he has a housekeeper, Miss So-and-so. Now, Miss So-and-so had been the housekeeper for 25 years, but so we very well knew what Mrs. So-and-so was. But they too came to church 3 times Sunday and on Wednesday night for communion or confession. So like it was that. The difference in that phrase, he's a bachelor, if they were referring to someone who was gay, it was, oh, well, he's a bachelor, dear, and blah, 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 blah. But if it was someone who was living with someone, he's a, well, he's a bachelor, dear, and blah, blah. So it was the intonation, and you knew the truth.
Wow. You were learning like the utterage. You were learning the way it's orally spoken. Yeah.
Exactly. But the leveling line was, how were they treated in the church? And those very same people had the same position in terms of extended family as everybody else. We call those people Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, da, 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 da. And they had responsibility for us, just like everybody else in the community. So you're growing up with these, you can't, I couldn't possibly think of someone who is labeled gay, and I had known these people in the way that was presented to me out there in the world. It was just foreign. It was foreign.
And so what happened when you moved further afield from those communities into cities, into other communities in your travels?
Yeah.
And run up against homophobia, run up against prejudice.
Well,
what happened to you then?
This was the big thing. Let's say in the business, because of all my teaching, and so up until that time, see, I had figured out that there are many battlefields on which a battle must be fought, and you must know who your enemy is. Well, once you understand that the enemy of one battlefield is the same enemy on the other battlefield, and the other one, and the other one, okay, now you have to concentrate how to combine the energy and whatever. In other words, I knew that battlefield number 1 was being Black in society. Battlefield 2, dealing with colorism, both outside the community and within the community. Battlefield number 3, the gay issue. Battlefield number 4, feminism. That all these battlefields. And who is your common enemy? You got to figure that out first. Okay. And then I realized that, all right, I have to know when I'm dealing with somebody, whether or not the specific issue that dominates their battlefield has completely consumed the thinking, so that they cannot readily see the issues on the other battlefields. And so, I dealt with that a great deal. And I understood. Of course, I had to learn to understand, yes, their issue that they're dealing with is of that magnitude, and that is correct. However, within that issue, have they been, for whatever reasons, now so consumed with that issue that It's to the detriment of their being effective in any other battle. And so I I dealt with that. But when it came to say like dealing with gay issues within the business, well, first of all, if I sensed anything, and the antenna by this time are always out, I say, okay, now this particular person, what am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with a color issue?
Right, I see.
As in colorism? Am I dealing with a black issue? If this is in casting? Am I dealing with a gay issue? But in all those issues, it was never this, or this. But if it was gay, you know perfectly well the other two issues looking at me are right behind. So it's never just this or that. As a matter of fact, I've played so many roles of anything I wanted to do. So 9 times out of 10, it did boil down to color.
Wow. Yeah.
You know? But once I figured that, then I know how to deal with you on that too. Which is why there has been this dual development in me of artist and activist.
Yeah.
An activist just stands up there and spouts a few things here, there. No, in the trenches, forming the first groups, knowing how to do battle. So,
I remember you once telling me the story of being in the lobby at the Neptune Theatre in Halifax and meeting like John Neville or one of those artistic directors and talking to him about that company and the work and what communities were going to be represented. And a long time ago now.
It was in 1978.
Wow.
And it was my first time meeting John. And I was working for the Black United Front at that time as their communications officer. And I went to Neptune to because they were putting on a welcoming thing for John. But down on the stage, they were rehearsing Man in the Moon Marigolds.
Oh, yeah.
And Odetta was playing the mother.
In the production. Odetta was in it.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
And it was an all-black cast.
Wow.
John Gray directed that.
Oh.
No, not John Gray. The other John. But anyway, upstairs, we're hearing them rehearsing down there. So I say to John Neville, I said, Mr. Neville. He said, oh, call me John, Walter, call me John. I said, oh, John. He said, right now, we can hear down on the stage, a rehearsal going on, and it's really exciting to us in the community because, we have this play with a black cast, and it's Odetta. Now I said, what I would like to know, because you're the incoming artistic director, whether or not what we're seeing down there is an indication of things to come, or are we just dealing with another, how do I put it, fly-by-night situation? And he said, Walter, first of all, and maybe I'm going to have to show you this, but I'll tell you right now, I'm not a fly-by-night person. And I said, okay, John, I'll take you on that. And he told me, he said, long before it was the in thing to do, my wife Caroline and I adopted children who look just like you. I said, okay. Now, of course, we became such great friends. Because I was still very much into the activist world, and he came into that world, became very, very close with some
Wow.
the leading members up there, Joan and Rocky and all like that, who adored him. So we talked about many things, of course. But my eyes and my mind were still wide open for vistas yet to be viewed with regards to my working within the industry. But what it did was it allowed me to gauge people on a vast plane, as opposed to, and you learn to do this. I would spot characteristics in the behavior. I learned to know where they're coming from, where things are being concealed. You just learn, because our whole thing was reading between lines. That's my life. I read between lines, where the story lies.
Which is so essential. When, like, you often, share that the quote about when people show you who they are, believe them.
Hey,
You have to be able to read between the lines, right? To
you got
see.
to do that, as hard as it might be. But like you can't, you can't come back a little while later and say, well, I never knew. You never saw.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
But you have to be trained to see.
Was it at that time? Is that where you met Odetta?
That's when we met Odetta.
And you remained very good friends all through her life, eh?
Right up to talk to her just a week before her death. Like,
Wow.
And see, that was another great help for me too. Odetta, being able to talk to Odetta, and we talked about everything. Harry Belafonte was another. Like, Miriam Makeba. Look, what I learned from them, because this would come up in conversation, that here I was in Nova Scotia, this Black person in Nova Scotia, trying to forge a career here, but deeply embedded in the activist world, because the two were not exclusive. And because they had done the same thing. Because I had nobody there to talk to about this, because I was the only one.
Oh my gosh.
But when I could sit down and talk with them, it wasn't on the same level. They never looked at it like that. The work was the same. It was the artist doing this other thing. And each one of them had done it, and each one of them had suffered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was a godsend to me, truly.
They were like your mentors, right? Like they were.
They really were. They really were. We just hired people say, "Oh, no, that's not how they were." When I think of Harry or Miriam or Odetta or Stokely, whatever, I think of them sitting around the big old oak table, which is still right there in Halifax, sitting around that table at 1 or 2 in the morning, hashing it out, just hashing it out. And so, I respected them. They had all the respect in the world. But they were family. At midnight, at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, you ain't nothing but family.
It's so beautiful, because it's like really carrying the teachings of your mom, of your community, of your church with you into your life, right? Those teachings continue like they're family.
Definitely. And like in that journey, I had to take so many other things that they had given to me as teaching, and I end up saying, well, thank you very much. But no, we ain't using that. But knowing how to do it, because you don't throw the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
As they all say. You got to be cool about that and understand that. Somebody comes to you and they say, listen, that person taught you the very best that they could with what they had. Now, it might have been all wrong, but that's what they were given. Like my aunt used to always say, child, it was a lie from me, it was a lie to me. And so here it is. You know, so they can't help but give you the lie. If you have done your homework and you recognize it to be that, you don't crush them.
Yeah.
Because, and it doesn't mean that I acquiesce and say, that's right. No. I always put it in terms of, well, I have to do this because of this, this, and this, and this, and this.
Totally.
And maybe that worked once, but it doesn't work now. It doesn't work for now. So, you know, because like I say, there are a lot of folks out there. I mean, I'm not letting anybody off the hook. I mean, I know when someone is something, no, we got an issue. Okay. And the other is just giving me all they know. So I always say, because my mother always said to me that when you meet somebody, and you know, you might be able to tell them something, correct them in a mistake. I say, that is the core of one very deep aspect of my philosophy, my psychology. Listen, if I meet you and I hear you say something outlandish, I assume that you don't know. So I tell you, not with the intent of you believing me, but with the intent of finding out if what I'm saying is true. It is not my responsibility to learn for you.
Right.
I have simply told you something.
Right.
Now you find out if I'm right or wrong. Now, when you come back to me the next time and you say the same thing, then I know I'm dealing with someone who chooses not to know, as opposed to I don't know. And when you do that, I know where the battle lines are.
I'm always struck, Walter, with you with what you don't. Like where you see just plain foolishness and you go, I'm not even addressing that.
No.
And where you do take on the education.
Yeah, because, you know, it's like it's not ego or anything. I know by this time in my life that one of the things I am is a teacher. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I also know what classroom I teach in.
Yeah.
And if you wander into my classroom, and I know you're not supposed to be there, I'll tell you, your classroom is down the hall. Okay? I don't teach elementary, and I don't teach junior high school. I am in advanced studies here. Now, you go to that classroom down there and you learn, and you will eventually get to here the same way that I had to get to here.
Yeah.
But don't think you're coming into my classroom and disrupting my lesson plan, because it ain't going to happen.
Bro.
You know, and I find that is what impedes us a lot. People will, okay, they might be moved to get involved with something, and they immediately want to be on the board of advisors. And I'm saying, like, you aren't even out of grade 2.
Yeah.
And you have to tell people this. You know, again, there are ways of doing it, but when they become belligerent and want to do it anyway, that's a red flag for you. That's when you know you're not in here for the reason that you say you're in here. You're in here to deal with other parts of your psychology. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And we used to check that out in our activist organization, because we had to. Because if you're going to come in here with a certain bunch of baggage that is legitimate for you and needs to be dealt with, this is not the place. You're coming in under the guise of doing something, you will be a detriment.
Yeah.
And so, but we can guide you where to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that is truly one of the major stumbling blocks with a lot of groups. Well, we don't want to exclude. Yeah, you do. You do. But you must know why you're doing it. And you're not dropping them by the wayside. You're directing them to where they are most effective at that time. And when you have accumulated what is necessary to function here, the door is wide open.
Yeah. You've always been a teacher, and that's teaching has been part of this trinity, I guess, of the artist, poet, playwright, actor, and the activist and the teacher, and they're so integrated, those things in your life.
It totally, and it was like a combination of being born with a facility, although you don't know it at the time, but it's all about how that's guided. And I had some powerful guides.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, I didn't realize it until years later, but the whole activist side of me, it couldn't be otherwise, because from my very earliest years, one of the great activists in the province of Nova Scotia, Dr. Carrie Best, was there. Another, my aunt, my dad's younger sister, Dr. Pearline Oliver, it was there. I was raised in this.
In your blood.
You know, they were the first champions of the Viola Desmond. I mean, they, you know, it was that kind of activism thing that was going on that was my foundation. I had no choice but to go down.
At the oak table. At the oak table.
Yeah, it's, you know, and
It's
so
recently, like you were appointed to the advisory board for the conservatory at the Stratford Festival of Canada.
yes,
And congratulations on that, and lucky Stratford, I say. What would you say to a young person coming out, a young queer Black kid coming out? What would you say to them? What advice or counsel might you have?
there'd be a number of things, but two things, like a definite appreciation and understanding of what is there in front of you. You don't run away from that. This is what's there. Now, how do you deal with that? If you don't go into it, and this is what, when I choose certain people to work with, this is the main thing that I deal with. What I want you to find is you in the midst of all the chaos.
Wow.
Like, and you know, just not something to learn as a motto on this. Listen. To truly believe that when you take in what you could call the universe as every little thing around you, and the best way to do it is to take yourself out quietly one night and just look, take it all in and look in. And if you can say, all that is the only thing greater than I myself. And believe it. Believe it. then all this stuff that swirls around you while you're here, and it's not just, you know, like I say, putting a little motto in your head. No, you got to believe that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I believed that.
Yeah.
And I believed it all my life. So, like, I can put your, well, your negative aspects, and they can be gargantuan or they can be small as a gnat. But I put it all into that same thing.
Hmm.
You are on your journey.
Yeah.
Okay? The only time that your journey has anything to do with my journey is when our arcs cross.
Hmm.
Now, at that point, if I realize and I believe that our arcs have crossed for a reason, I don't even know what the reasons are. I'll
Okay.
figure that out.
Yeah.
But I take it from this point of view. Your arc crossed mine. Now, I don't know why they did. You don't know why they did.
Yeah.
Well, no. You know why they did by how I received the crossing of the arcs. How I received it.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
How I receive it will tell you why our arcs crossed. I can't tell you that.
Right. Right.
You know that.
Yeah.
You say, why? But I can't say why your arc crossed mine. Well, what did I get from it?
Yeah.
What did I get from it? Ah, okay. That's why they crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it a reminder? Was it a new teaching? Was it whatever? But I decide then whether we both stand at the crossroads of those arcs cutting or whether I just continue on my journey and you continue on yours.
Because we're already on it. We're
Because
already
we're
on it.
already on it. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to dilly-dally there with you.
Yeah.
I just am not going to do that. What we can do is start down this arc or this road that I am traveling, because my purpose in meeting you here was to do that. But then
Alright.
you can choose whether to go down there or not.
Oh, yeah.
But I know what my arc is. I know what it is.
Hmm.
And if it means including you on the arc, it does not mean me following your arc. It means you following mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the teacher here. You know, and you have to be able to humbly accept that and challenge yourself every single second.
Yeah.
By questioning, are you up to snuff? Have you fallen behind? Da 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 da. To do the best, you got to do that,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and it becomes easier naturally.
Both like really looking out and seeing the world for where it's at, and knowing your own journey, knowing yourself with it.
Knowing it,
Yeah.
knowing it, knowing it, even when you don't know it, because as it says in Tightrope Time, you know by re-knowing. There's much that you know,
Yeah.
but you've forgotten.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you re-know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that our arcs crossed,
They certainly have.
and that I've had that pleasure with you for, I don't know, 30 years now, maybe, eh, Walter? Like
Yeah, yeah.
a long time. I wish I met you when I was 15. I could have really used you at 15. So I'll take you now. I'll take you now and I'm
Yeah.
your beautiful self. And so just on behalf of everybody here, I thank you so much for sharing this. This hour just went by so quick. Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh. And there's so many things I want to talk to you about from,
I know, I
but
know,
we
I
will.
know.
We will. And I really encourage our listeners to look for Tightrope Time by Walter Borden, the Epistle of Tightrope Time. Really, really rare and special and life in a stay on the stage.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Walter.
oh, you're so welcome, Peter. So welcome. It's been a joy.
Happy Pride to you. Love to you.
And to you too, dear.
Okay. See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.